What's your birthday?
June 9th, 1927. I'm 91.
You look fantastic.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
It was a time of great upheaval. It caused people to be more conscious of patriotism. Naturally, when a country is involved in a war, people feel that they have to go beyond the norm in order to show their loyalty to that particular nation. And so because of that fact, so many people misunderstood if you were not a part of the fervor. I had two brothers who were draft age, and one of my brothers was participating in the CC camp program. He was the one who first brought the news to us that Pearl Harbor had brought the country into war. And his fear was that it would mean that he would probably be either drafted or take his stand for neutrality. So that was how the family felt affected, worried about, the outcome with my brother. He served time in prison as a conscientious objector. My dad was a railroad worker. He worked in Jersey City Roundhouse, where the trains came in. He was a mechanic. His former occupation, he was schooled to become an undertaker. But over the years, it became necessary for him to get a second job, and it finally took him away from his first business. We were a family of 10 children, and I was the oldest girl. I had 3 older brothers. My mother was a seamstress, and she worked from home for the man that she had worked for many years in the city. He used to bring work to her. So it wasn't that she was totally unemployed,
Right. But
she stayed at home. My family started studying the Bible with one of Jehovah's Witnesses in 1938. Over the course of 2 years, we came to appreciate more and more things about the Bible that we had never known, and particularly to understand the value of getting to know the God of the Bible, Jehovah, and his requirements beyond just being a religious person, to try to have a one-on-one relationship with the God of the Bible. That came to be a very important part of our life. And my parents were concerned that that all of their children would also have access to the knowledge as well. So as a family, we studied the Bible together. And that was, like I said, 1938. In 1939, my oldest brother and I, my father and my parents had separated over the issue of religion. My mother had been raised a Catholic, and for almost, I'd say about 8 or 9 months, my parents were separated. But in time, my mother saw the need for her to reunite with my father for the benefit of the whole family, and because she had come to appreciate things that she found not acceptable by the behavior of the Catholics who she had grown up with. So she also became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But she was not baptized until 1941. Prior to baptism, our studies teach us what Jehovah requires of his witnesses, his servants. And so when you are willing to accept the terms that the Bible sets for Jehovah's servants, you make a dedication in prayer to God. That's the moment that you become a witness. But the baptism, which may be several months or even a year later, it lets everybody know that you've made that dedication.
So that's a public confession.
Yes. I was in the public school. When I was very young, I was in Catholic school. But my parents, as the family grew, could no longer afford tuition, so we started going to public school. And it was from public school that we were finally expelled because of the flag salute issue.
With regards to the Pledge of Allegiance, what were you taught?
My parents were not inclined to give us rules as to how we would accept our dedication, or how we would, at what point in our life we would make a dedication. Like I said, my own experience, I was baptized in 1939, but I was one of the older children in the family. And my parents always taught us that if we make a dedication to God, then we have to live up to that dedication. But in order to do that, we had to understand. We had to really understand what God requires of us. And once we understand, the point of our own appreciation to accept it and to live by it would be up to us. They did teach us the Bible principles. For instance, one of the big stories that my parents used to tell us was a story about Daniel and his 3 companions who were made prisoners in Babylon, taken into exile, and the stand that they took regardless of the consequences. They were young people, perhaps in their teens, when they were faced with this issue. And so they said, it's your turn to decide whether you'll be like Daniel and his 3 companions. So focusing on that and understanding that just because we were young, it didn't excuse us from living by Bible principles, we finally made a choice. And as we made that choice, then what followed was up to us. It was required that you would stand at attention, place your hand over your heart, and pledge that you would be loyal to the flag which represented your country. Jehovah's Witnesses give you the Bible principles. You can, at the point of your dedication and then your baptism, you can accept the fact that you will either live by those standards or you will no longer be one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So if you are of age and understanding and you choose to make that dedication, then you live by it. That's what we're taught. And since we understood neutrality, not only from the standpoint of Bible characters in what's called the Old Testament, but even Jesus himself remained separate from even accepting the kingship when it was they tried to force it on him. because he taught that his kingdom was not of this world. So in loyalty to the kingdom that Jesus proclaimed, the one that he taught us to pray for, we felt we could not give our allegiance to any other kingdom or government. And so that was the choice we made. It's a matter of exclusive devotion to Jehovah. One of the first commandments, you'll have no other God beside me. People can make anything their God, and some have chosen to make loyalty to kingdoms of the world their focus in life, or their God, what motivates them. So in our mind, it's as simple as that.
In New Jersey, they had a rule in the public schools requiring mandatory Pledge of the Allegiance.
Absolutely. Shock. My parents always demanded proper conduct from us in our school. They always threatened us that if they ever had to come to school because of misconduct, they were going to punish you right there before your class.
Yeah.
So it was something you did not want to happen. So we always got good grades as far as, our conduct were concerned. All of a sudden, for us to make a total change in our behavior was more than the teacher could understand. Had a very nice teacher that I liked so much. And she was always very gracious to us, even when our grades were not the best, because she admired the way we conducted ourselves. But then when this happened, she said, you must salute the flag or leave the classroom. The students were all focused on us, of course. My brother and I happened to be in the same grade because he had been left back. But the teacher put us out of the class into the hall. And then when the session was over with the flag salute in the classroom, she took us to the principal's office. Now the principal was very gruff. He had always had a demeanor, I think because of his job, that frightened people. You didn't want to go to the principal's office. And so his immediate response was, you go back to the classroom and salute the flag, or you're not going to stay in school. So when we told him we couldn't do that, he called the teacher and called the Board of Education, a part of the staff of the Board of Education, and reported the problem. So he gave us a note to take to our parents and required that they come to this meeting with the Board of Education and the teachers that were involved. Because my other siblings were not in that particular school. So some of their teachers were also brought in. So that was the beginning. Our society had a legal department, which was also notified, and they provided a counselor for us to help us meet with the Board of Education. And it was a kind of a very heated incident. Our principal was really adamant, and one of the members of the Board of Education said that the country required its citizens to show their loyalty by the Pledge of Allegiance, and if you're not loyal, then you need to be in prison. So that was his stand, and that really was frightening to us in a sense. But my parents said that whatever choice we had made, they supported us 100%. The following week, after we had the meeting with the Board of Education, the teacher, we went to school, used to take a school bus to go to school. We went to school, and once again, the teacher expelled us. Our direction from our lawyers from headquarters was to go to school every day, because if they had threatened my parents that if we were truant, they were going to take us from them and put us in reform school. And of course, we didn't want that to happen. So as a result, we would go to school every morning on the school bus. Sometimes we'd have people hitting us in the back of the head or making ugly remarks about us on the bus. And off the bus, there'd be a fight. And it was constant, you know, stones and sticks and stones and all that stuff being hurled at us. But it was something we had to go through every day because we didn't want to be taken from our parents and put in reform school. So it was not a pleasant time in our life. But since we had made the choice on our own, our parents said, you get on the school bus, and as long as you have that determination, you stand fast for it. I was 13 when it started. Mm-hmm. We would be expelled every day, and so that meant we had the time between 9 o'clock in the morning and 2:30, I think it was, we took the bus home. So what we did was we had territory assigned in that area where the school was, and we would go from house to house in our preaching work.
Oh, wow.
And then we would go back to school in time to take the school bus home.
1940 was the Gobitas case.
Yes, it was.
Were you aware of that?
Very much so. At the same time that the Gobitas' case had been brought to the level of national interest in the Supreme Court, we were going through a legal case in the lower court in our area to prevent the school board from putting us in reform school. And we were represented by one of the main lawyer, Covington, from Watchtower headquarters, and his assistant, Bill Jackson, who represented us. But we were following the Gobitas case all the way through. I remember the reaction it meant. My parents said, this shows you that your trial is not over. What you do from this point on is going to reflect on Jehovah. If you want to continue to represent Jehovah the way he wants you to represent him, you have to watch your behavior, and you have to make sure that no matter what happens, you do not try to defend yourself beyond just putting up your own hand of defense. You don't want to participate in any type of riot or something happening in school. You want to maintain your dependence on Jehovah. Very much so, yeah. Very much so. At the time, in our school, there were very few blacks. Of course, in those days, we were considered colored. And even though we were not under the same kind of pressure that the colored people in the South had to endure. There was a lot of animosity just because of your color. Some of the teachers were inclined to show distaste for the colored students in their class in whatever ways they chose. But some were just as impartial as a person could be. And we came to respect that and look for that in people. That a lot of people in ignorance feel that there's a marked difference because of color, but it's up to you. Your conduct is what's going to eventually tell them whether you're worthy of their trust or whether you can even be likable. So that was something ingrained in us anyway. But there were certain areas of our territory in that part of Middletown, Monmouth County, very well wealthy people, I'll say, like Rumson Highlands, Atlantic Highlands. That was all a part of the territory that we worked. And there were rules in that area that you didn't, if you were colored, you didn't come in after 5 o'clock in the evening because it was totally white. And so our preaching in those areas, even during the daytime, met up with a lot of insults, racial slurs, even before the flag salute issue came up. But after that, it became very, very pronounced.
Were there many blacks in the Jehovah's Witness?
Yes, in many areas, just not in the area where I grew up. In our congregation, we had only one other member who was colored. All the others were white. In our kingdom school that the society established in Lakewood, we were the only blacks. Actually, my brother that was in the same grade that I was in, his name was Ralph, he had, in the classroom, he had a friend. They had played football together and baseball together, you know, whatever. And they were buddies. It just happened that he was the son of the principal. So when the boys would gang up on my brother, Bruce would take sides with my brother. And when his father found out, he was so upset with him. And he said, "You are joining forces with a traitor." And the boy said to his father, "You always taught me never to join forces with people that are pushing people down, that are, you know, take sides with the underdog." He said, "Not in this case." So, yeah, the kids were pretty rough.
And were they created right after Gobitas or as a result of Gobitas?
They were created, Gobitas went to a kingdom school that was established in Pennsylvania. When New Jersey set up this desire to remove the children from their parents because of the flag salute, based on truancy, then our headquarters staff, our legal department, saw the need to establish a kingdom school in Jersey. So we had to, they purchased a hotel, and we had to travel about 90 miles to go to kingdom school. So it meant we stayed there all week, and on the weekend we would go home. My parents couldn't afford to support the arrangement financially, so my mother used to do the laundry and sewing for whatever needs there were in the school. And my father would see that our stamps, at that time they had ration stamps, he would see that the stamps that the government issued for the family, that the portion of stamps that went with the majority of the children, which were in school, 6 of us, that our stamps would go with us and help toward the support of us.
Wow.
While we were in school.
Now, did both your parents go with you to Lakewood?
No.
No.
My parents were involved in the original meeting with the teacher. Our teacher had lost her job because she refused to lead the class in the flag salute. And so she was fully, credited. And our principal had also been an educator. He was working at Watchtower headquarters in Wallkill. And he had the credentials, so he became the principal of both schools. On one occasion, we had an opportunity to meet the students in the school in Pennsylvania where the Gobitas were. And that was my only personal, meeting with Lillian in particular. She was in the Kingdom School in Pennsylvania. We got a chance to meet her. It was an interchange of encouragement.
Yeah.
Yes. We had at the maximum 36 students. They ranged from 6 years old up to about 14. My brother, I think, was in the older group, and I was 1 year behind them. But being the oldest girl in the family, I had the care of all of my younger siblings to continue to take care of while I was there, so I was second mom. We did learn about several efforts on the part of the school board to close the school down because, for one thing, they would come in and make sure that the food was adequate, that the buildings were properly heated, and that health issues were taken care of. The health department and the Board of Education would come in and give us tests to see if we were up to grade level. But apart from those things, the teachers didn't tell us things that were going on. On occasions when the school was threatened, like when there was a very severe winter, I think in '42, we couldn't get home for 3 weeks. And so the furnaces were going constantly to keep the place warm. And it was a 3-story hotel building. So the coal was about to run out. We had no more ration stamps for coal. And we didn't know what was going to happen. The Board of Health said, your coal is down to a minimum. What are you going to do about your coal? And so we said, well, we're trying to take care of it. We haven't quite, gotten there yet. We'll let you know. But they kept checking, and we were down to maybe a couple days. The teacher told the class about it, and she said, it's your school. It's your God that's involved. You pray about the situation, because if it isn't solved, then we're going to have to send you home. Well, we all prayed, of course, not knowing exactly what to pray for. We knew that we didn't expect miracles, but on this particular occasion when the coal was about to run out, we woke up to the morning before we had to leave, if there was no more coal. And we heard coal going down the chute.
Wow.
And we were in shock because we couldn't imagine how this happened. And the minute we got to the classroom, we started asking the teacher, how did we get the coal? Where did the coal come from? She said, I haven't the slightest idea. But as soon as the janitor comes, I'll ask him, because he had to open the chute for them. The friends, the witnesses in Pennsylvania had gone to the mines, gleaned coal, and sent coal to both schools to keep them open because both of them were facing closure.
Wow.
To us, it was like a miracle. We thought it was just the greatest thing. But all those things help you to appreciate the value of prayer. 2.5 years from the 1940 to 1943, when the Supreme Court reversed the decision. We were following it very carefully.
Did they talk about it in school? Was that part of your classes?
Yes, we kept track of what was going on with that case. On one occasion, one of our lawyers from headquarters visited the students in both classes to keep them abreast of what the case, how the case was coming along. He represented us too.
Yeah, what was he like?
Very businesslike, but warm. Yes. His assistant, Bill Jackson, was more for children. He was more personable as far as children were concerned. Brother Jackson met with our parents, and he was taking care of business. I mean Covington.
Yeah.
But Brother Jackson was on our level. He wanted to know what we thought. He asked us the kind of questions you're asking.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it? And he actually gave us a rundown of what we were about to face and how we could handle it. If you had been around, you would have heard the shout. We were all very happy about the decision. We wanted the school to continue. We wanted to be able to continue to go to our Kingdom School. We really enjoyed. The curriculum was basically the same, but there were other aspects of our school that we had come to enjoy so much. And of course, living together with our classmates made it more like a family. And we had come to have close ties with our fellow students. So we kind of hated breaking up. But our teacher and the staff there at Kingdom School reminded us that this was a measure taken to protect us from being incarcerated or put in reform school, and that it was no longer necessary. It was an expense that would no longer be necessary. And our job now was to let our neighbors and our schoolmates, we're going back to school, let them know that we've kept up to speed and that we have come off victorious. I didn't go back to school.
Okay.
I had finished 8th grade. At the time, the school was offering a program that you could pass a test. Actually, it was a series of tests, and you could get your diploma based on this series of tests that you took. 1943, I went into what we call our pioneer work, our preaching activity, full-time. And that's how I spent my days. My father had always been demanded that we keep up to grade level. In Kingdom School, it was demanded by the teacher that we stayed above grade level, because we kept having tests that the Board of Education would come in and give us. And she said, I don't ever want to see any of you fail your tests. I want you to be above grade level. The older children were given the responsibility of training the younger ones if they had problems in math or English or whatever, making sure that they got it. And of course I had my own entourage to take care of, so. I think it was a wonderful learning experience. One of the things that I drew from it was that when you are dedicated, no matter whether to God or to any given thing, if you're dedicated whole-souled and you work at it, there are rewards that go along with it. When it comes to our dedication to God, He is a rewarder of those who serve Him. And I saw that happen so many times in my young life that it helped me to view people and conditions in a totally different light. I wasn't so quickly judgmental. I learned you don't judge people by their lack of knowledge. When people learn that things are not as they seem to be, they're more in a position to make good judgments. So our work was to try to educate people by Bible standards that would help them as it had helped us to focus on the greater picture. No, I don't think so. They understand to a certain degree, but there's nothing like experience to have the same effect. You can tell the children, which we do, and they all face their own issues nowadays, things that we never had to face in the school system. But you can help them to appreciate from your experience that if they are servants of Jehovah, Jehovah's always with you. And you will come off victorious. To let people know, basically, that Jehovah's Witnesses are just people like everybody else. That we make choices in life. And like every other person who wants to have self-worth, we stick by our choices. And the most important choice in our life is the choice to honor and glorify our God in trying to live by His standards, regardless of how it may impact our lives.
You're very impressive. I know that's not what you want to hear, but
I've enjoyed so much the things that I learned from my youth on to this point in my life. I like to tell young people how vital it is that you form a link with our Creator early in life. You can't go wrong.